Hi, it's Laurie Smith with Ace Realty, and today on Ask Ace, we are in warm, sunny Huron, South Dakota.
Yeah.
As you can see outside, just kidding, all joking aside, I'm here with Angie Uttecht, and today we're here to talk about the year in review for 2025 and what's ahead for 2026.
Can't believe it's already the end of the year. It's crazy. I don't know where the time went, but here we are again.
Yes, it just flies right on by, or in South Dakota, it winds right through.
It is that. So, I don't know if we locked the door. Well, if someone's brave enough to come in, we'll work with that.
It'll be all right.
Yeah. So Laurie and I went to the National Association of Realtors Convention in Houston recently, and learned a lot about, of course, they talk about the year-end numbers, kind of where they think things are going to go in 2026 and so forth. And we have some great economists that we have working for us at the National Association who are usually pretty spot on. So we'll kind of talk about a little bit about that. And then also, every year, the National Association of Realtors puts out a profile of home buyers and sellers. And we've been talking about that here at ACE and just kind of going through some of those statistics and those surveys and things that they come up with, because it's always very interesting. So that was just released, and they talked about that at convention, and actually a lot of it made the news. So one specific number that was in the news was 40. So, what do you think that number represents? Not our age.
Nope, not my age.
But the average age of the first-time home buyer is now at 40 years old. I should say median age, but
yeah.
Our past president, Kevin Sears of the association, he spoke before Congress and talked about how people are getting into homes a decade later than what we got into homes, and I got into a home before I was 30. So, and I think you did as well. So our children and other young people out there, if you're not able to get into a house until you're 40 years old, it's just real tough to build wealth.
Yeah. The other thing that I found really interesting is last year, 21% of all first-time buyers were first-time home buyers. Before that, 40% of buyers were first-time home buyers. So that is half of what buyers are out there. And I also think that's where your young buyers is in that first time home buyer category. So to know that number has dropped by half for people being the first time home buyers, and then you put that with the age of 40 years old, I mean, it really does go along. And I think just where the economy is at with college debt, and things are just changing for the younger generation to actually step in and buy that house and start building that wealth at such an early age.
And another statistic that I always am intrigued with as well is that the wealth of a homeowner is 43 times the wealth of a renter. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, that would be the case, that the wealth would be larger, but that's huge.
Yeah.
So, young people today, if they don't have their parents or somebody helping them, they might not get a home. And not everybody has that availability or parents to help them, which is where, we can help. I mean, we're not going to give you money, but certainly help explain the process and all the things that you can do to prepare to buy that first home. And our lenders are so important in this process. We work as a team with the lenders, hopefully local lenders, because it just is so much easier when you can pick up the phone and talk to somebody that and help you get to become a homeowner, because you might need other programs out there besides just maybe a first-time home buyer alone. You're going to need some other knowledge and assistance, and that's what we're here for, is to help you get started with that process or get you in the right direction. We might not always know the answers, but we're going to try to help you find them if we're not sure.
Yeah. And remember, when we talk about these numbers, these are national numbers. And so we don't ever want you to think, gosh, I'm too young to buy a house. I don't even want to have that discussion right now because they just told me 40 years old. Remember, nationally, that's what's going on around the world. Here locally, I think we don't see that as often. We do see a lot of young first-time home buyers getting ready for that. But it also takes, just like she was saying, the knowledge and where to start and where to begin. So don't be afraid to ask those questions, reaching out to a local lender. And how do you get started in the process? And what's the best steps? And how do I build my credit score? And what do I need for a down payment? A lot of people also believe, hey, I need 20% down to purchase a house. That's not always the case. So just remember to ask the questions, and it's okay to ask the professional the questions.
I think our business would have been cut in half or lower if people had to have 20% down to buy a house. So exactly, you don't have to have 20% down by any means, and there's a lot of programs out there to help. Another thing it said, so in the 80s, the average age or median age for a first-time home buyer was in their late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just changed so much. But Laurie made a good point. That's nationally. I would love to see a statistic of what the average age is of the first-time home buyer here in Huron, and it is less. We know that, but there still are plenty of people that want to get into a home that are struggling because home affordability is just at all-time lows. It's just very difficult to get the funds available to purchase that first home. And another interesting fact is record high of all cash home buyers. So, but when you think about it, our average sale price has increased considerably, which we'll talk about here in a minute, or has increased here in Huron. And so you have people that have been in their house a long time, so they've gained the equity that we're telling you we want you, people who aren't in homeownership yet, to be able to achieve that dream. So you too maybe one day can pay cash for a house because you've built up equity over time. But that also is record high, which is interesting. And people are having higher down payments. Well, that kind of makes sense too if they've gained quite a bit of equity on their house over the years, since houses have been appreciating. Another interesting fact is real estate agents remain very essential, which of course we know and we understand that, but the number of people using for sale by owners is the lowest it's ever been.
Which I think that just comes down to the way that things have changed over the few years here recently with how contracts are read and wrote, and you just want to make sure that you are protecting yourself in the transaction. You hear it time and time again, well, I want to save on those realtor fees. I don't want to spend that money on the realtor fees. But when you're going into this transaction, you want to make sure that both the seller and the buyer's rights are being protected and that everything is covered and that you're making sure to get every step covered so later on down the road you don't find out, oh, hey, something got missed.
Things are getting more and more complicated all the time as far as writing those agreements. So a record 91% of sellers used a real estate agent.
That is really
which is incredible. Another important little statistic is for sale by owners don't typically, as far as NAR data shows, for sale by owners don't typically fare as well selling for significantly less than agent-assisted homes. So sometimes they'll do it for sale by owner because they think they're saving money, but when in reality, for sale by owner median price, cross-country course, of $360 versus $425,000 for agent-assisted homes. I thought that was another very interesting statistic. There's just a wealth of information in that profile, home buyers and sellers, and a lot of it, talking about sellers and listing your house and so forth. And so we are studying that information. We have that information, and we're going to use that information to help better sell your property and help better to sell you a property. Now, like we've said, those are national numbers. So what about our numbers? We do study those every month. Of course, we don't have December's out yet since we're a few days away yet from the end of December. But we're going to pretty much, we're going to be down maybe just a little bit for sales, but not too bad. Right now we're showing a decrease of 16%, but I know we have a lot of closings in December and more closings this December than we had last December, so it kind of depends on how all that shakes out. But I'm going to guess we'll be more, down maybe 10 to 12% is where we'll end up. We'll see if I'm right on that guess, but that's what I would think. But the median or the average sale price of homes in Huron is year to date $211,482 for your average, compared to last year at this time. Of course, we got another month left, but was $189,389. Year before that, I think it was the year before that, we had hit 200,000 for the first time. So that's incredible. You can really gain some equity, even here in Huron, not as fast as what you might on the east or west coast, but we're sitting pretty good.
Yeah, it's quite, I remember years ago when you could buy an average, house for 150, 160, and each and every year that is just growing. So if you bought that house a few years ago, just checking back in with us to find out, hey, has my house gained any equity? Don't be afraid to contact us. We're always willing to do those market analysis to make sure that, you are. And if you're in question, hey, would this project be better for me to gain that equity, or would this project? Again, great questions to ask a realtor just to see where is it best to put my money to increase that equity.
I love doing that, give ideas on what. There is another report out there too that will help decide what your best return on investment is, and that is more specific for each area of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So just for example, one year the best return on your investment was your overhead garage door. When you pull up to a house and you see an old battered garage door, you're like, your first impressions are super important, whereas, what does a garage door cost, I guess? One for a while, but you'll get your money. Most likely, you might get your money back for that, or even the front door. The front door is huge.
Yes.
That isn't that expensive to replace your front door if it's really looking pretty tattered.
And sometimes it's a simple coat of paint on that front door.
Yes.
And there is a report out there that says what is the most popular color for a front door. Things like that. Just making sure to keep a fresh coat of paint on everything and protect that. So.
And I know there have been, for the first-time homebuyers, or any homebuyers for that matter, that maybe you're waiting and thinking, I'm going to wait for rates to reduce. And hopefully it does sound like in 2026 we might see a little bit of that happening. But if now is the right time for you to buy and you need to buy, waiting until rates come down, well, most likely the home prices are going to go up. I know we said last year at this time, the same thing, that if you wait, prices might go up, and guess what? They did.
Yeah.
From 2024 to 2025, they increased, and so it might not make that much of a difference depending on the number of years you take out that loan and so forth. So it's worth running a lot of numbers to see if it is worth it for you to wait, because if the right house is there, I think it's time to purchase.
Well, and I think a lot of, again, going back to those first-time home buyers, I think a lot of them stepped out of the market because they were waiting for better prices to come along, or waiting for better interest rates to come along. And now they say that first-time home buyers are going to come back in 2026 ready to buy a house. And I think the other part of that is now they're going to be competing. And so when you start competing, what happens? Your price of a house goes up. And so, there's nothing wrong. I know nobody wants to move on a day like today, but there is nothing wrong with go ahead and start that search now while there's not a lot of people out there. If you find the right house, go ahead, jump on it. Don't wait for that interest rate to go down. And maybe you do have to refinance it in a year. But I know there's been a lot of refinancing going on here these last few months, and the people that I have talked to, they said it was well worth it. My interest rate got dropped completely by 1%. I'm saving $500 a month on a payment. So again, it's okay to go ahead and buy it now and then just prepare yourself to refinance. So again, another great question to talk to a lender about. Even if you're in your house now and you've been in it a year, go ahead, talk to them and see if you can change that payment and get a better interest rate.
So, and everybody's situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking in general terms, but if, another thing that is interesting and good for us is that the NAR, National Association of Realtors, is forecasting a double-digit increase in home sales. They're expecting we'll have 14% more sales next year. And I think that here in Huron will probably be pretty stable or maybe a little bit above where we've been this year. I can't imagine we won't have more sales next year than we did this year. So what Laurie said, maybe you want to be out looking. We'll go show. We've shown in this type of weather before. We just pull out our boots and everything. But when you wait, there'll be more competition, is exactly what you said. So one nice thing about buyers in the marketplace right now, and even this whole last year, it's just a little bit different than it was right after COVID, because it really was not just frustrating for those buyers, it was frustrating for us too. You feel bad when only one person maybe had 5 offers on one house and only one person got it. I mean, we feel bad when that happens for sure. We want everybody to come away happy, and that doesn't always happen, but certainly your best chances now for getting a house are pretty good without as much competition.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot today about the buyers side of things. So let's switch it up.
Right into that.
Yeah. Let's talk about sellers for a little bit. What is the importance in selling, and where are we going at? Where are we at with that? And I think right now, the most important thing for a seller is pricing your house right. You want to make sure that pricing is spot on. Otherwise, you could sit on that house and get quite a few days on market for that.
And the thing about pricing, it's one of the hardest things we do, if not the hardest thing that we do. And it changes all the time. So we might have a house listed right now today that maybe we've got a couple closings that happened today, and those are good comparables for that property. We need to update our market analysis. It's a constant updating of that market analysis and what's happening. So it's good to try to get sellers in, or at least talk to them and say, hey, we had a couple new sales. I ran some new numbers for you. This is kind of where we're at. We don't have a crystal ball. I wish we did. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the only thing we have to go on is what's happened in the past and what is most comparable to your property. And very rarely, especially in Huron, when we don't have big developments where they, built 30 houses all the same, we don't have that. So everybody's house is unique. So we're having to make adjustments for the differences. And we really pride ourselves on working hard to work with the appraisers, or pick the appraisers' brains, I guess I should say, to find out, hey, what are the best adjustments to use per square feet, for example, per age. Some of those things that are hard facts, so that we can be close. We're not appraisers, but we use the same process so we can come up with a market analysis to best price it. It's not easy.
No. And like she said, pricing is probably the hardest thing. And just remember, as a seller, we could list your house today at this price, but at the end of the 30 days, if we look at it, the price could be completely different depending on what has closed within the last 30 to 60 days. If you look at the numbers, statistically, right now we are in a seller's market because we go by absorption rate. Absorption rate is just based on the inventory that we had, how many months could we, sustain in selling. And the absorption rate for this area is really low because our inventory is really low.
And
so
that's just the crazy statistic to look at, because we will probably tell you sitting here today, it feels more like a buyer's market just because we've seen lots of price reductions and things like that. But I think as the market adjusted away from the highest prices we've ever had, and we've started to adjust a little bit, it does feel like more of a buyer's market, but that absorption rate says a little bit differently. So I think, let's see, what are we for absorption rate year to date is 2.65. So what that means is 2.65 months, like Laurie had mentioned. So a stable market they consider to be 5 or 6. Anything under that 5 or 6 would be more of a seller's market, and then vice versa if you're over 6 for buyers. I haven't seen over 6 for years.
Yeah.
15 years maybe. I'm not sure. But so if we never took on another new listing, how long would it take us to sell our current inventory? And that would be 2.65 months, which, so another factor to consider, which we try to work on, is price points important. If you have a $500,000+ house, we want to try to narrow that down to more, let's talk about average days on the market for houses 500 and above or 400 and above, for example. So those are all important things too that we study to try to pinpoint more to your exact property as best we can.
Well, what else do you have over there?
I know there's just a lot of things, but those are a lot of things that we talked about at National Association of Realtors conference in Houston, and it's just always good to just hear perspectives from everyone there, including our lobbyists. We have some fantastic lobbyists, the best lobbyists on Capitol Hill, helping us fight for home ownership, private property rights, and all of those things. And that's why we're very passionate about investing in our PAC. Our PAC is what we call it, so that we are fighting for all things home ownership. So just for example, we're constantly fighting to make sure we get the reauthorization of the of flood insurance, which we were able to do. Congress, all of our representatives in Congress heard from us in regard to the government shutdown. And that was a rough one for, I personally didn't have anybody that was not able to close, but across the country, it affected a lot of homeowners and sellers too, from being able to close because of the government shutdown. So we are constantly working to ensure that the best processes are in place so that people can become homeowners and easier for sellers to sell. You've heard me talk about this before, but capital gains tax, it hasn't been changed since like 1997. And so if you are a single person, you have to have sold your house for $250 or not more than $250,000 in order to qualify for the capital gains exemption. If you're married, that's $500. Sometimes in our area we're able to meet that, and they do have that capital gains exemption. The client would qualify for that. But you get properties across the country. Well, even in South Dakota, I think the median average sale price in South Dakota is like almost $370,000. So if that's a single person, they're not going to qualify for the tax exempt for real estate proceeds on their sale. So those are things that we work for as well, and that we fight for, so that it's easier process for people to get into homes. That's a lot of information to throw out with you for sure, but that's why best thing is just to give us a call, talk to us here at Ace Realty, because we're happy to walk you through the process. And again, if we don't know the answers, we'll find out.
We just appreciate the year that we've had for 2025. We appreciate all our clients and referrals, and just any questions that you might have, please feel free to reach out to one of the local realtors, or especially here at Ace Realty. We'd love to answer those questions and help you in your process of either selling your home or buying a home.
Sure. So I guess Happy New Year 2026. How are we going to shut the camera off?
Merry Christmas. Have a great day.